We're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. And to begin our conversation on protecting taxpayers in the country, here's a background report by Timothy Yusuf.
As Nigeria pushes for stronger revenue generation and improved tax compliance, attention is increasingly turning to one important question: who protects the taxpayer? That question is at the heart of the newly created Office of the Tax Ombudsman, an institution established to strengthen accountability, fairness and trust within Nigeria's tax system. The Tax Ombudsman is designed to serve as an independent and impartial channel where taxpayers can report complaints against tax authorities without immediately going through lengthy court battles or confrontational enforcement processes. The office is expected to handle issues such as arbitrary tax assessments, multiple taxation, harassment and intimidation by revenue officials, delays in resolving disputes, abuse of enforcement powers, and unfair treatment of taxpayers. Unlike a court or a tax collection agency, the Ombudsman is intended to function as a neutral mediator, protecting taxpayers while also helping to improve confidence in the country's revenue system. The creation of the office comes at a time when many Nigerians, especially small business owners and informal sector operators, continue to raise concerns about excessive taxation, duplicated levies, and aggressive collection methods by some authorities. Supporters said the tax ombudsman could become a major safeguard for citizens by creating a structured and non-adversarial system for dispute resolution. However, questions are also being asked: will the office truly operate independently? Will its recommendations be enforceable? Can it effectively check abuses by powerful revenue agencies? And will ordinary Nigerians actually have access to it? For many observers, the success of the tax ombudsman may ultimately depend on transparency, public awareness, institutional independence, and the willingness of tax authorities to submit to oversight. The conversation is about balance, ensuring that while government pursues increased revenue, taxpayers are also protected from abuse, injustice, and arbitrary actions. This is the focus of today's conversation. For more, over now to our guests in the studio.
All right, many thanks, Timothy Yusuf, for the background reports. And let's begin the conversation here in the studio by introducing Farouk Abdullahi, who is Chairman, Ultimate Spectrum and Financial Analyst. It's a pleasure to welcome you again to Good Morning Nigeria.
It's always my pleasure. Good morning, Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigeria. We also have here in the studio Chris Kaka, Coordinator, Trade Network Initiative, Economist and Policy Analyst. You're welcome to Good Morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. And thank you, listeners.
All right, let's begin the conversation. Let me begin with Farouk. You know, for many Nigerians, taxation is often seen as a burden rather than a social contract. So, what does the creation of the Office of the Tax Ombudsman mean? What does it change?
Thank you very much. Before I respond to a question, it's good to put a context to the entire topic. I think the creation of the Office of the Ombudsman is meant, to protect the rights of taxpayers. And as we all know, taxpayer protection, is very vital and important, especially if you look at any modern economy. Taxation is not considered merely as a mechanism, to generate revenue, but also as a social contract, between the citizens and the government. On one hand, the citizens are obligated to pay tax. On the other hand, the government is also obligated to protect the right of, taxpayers. So at the heart of everything, confidence will be built in the government, and, taxpayers are also to be considered as partners, to national development, not as, tools of generating revenue by the government. So the creation of the tax the office of the tax ombud. I think it happened in November last year, and it was the first.
With the act.
Yeah, it came with the act, with the new act, because the entire tax system have been overhauled, by the recent reform that was done by the current Minister of Finance, which is pretty much of a good one, and it's timely. So that office is part of the tools that to address, or to protect taxpayers from issues arising, as a result of, administrative, or legal procedures that are related to, the collection or the payment of tax, because taxpayers, before now, are facing a lot of issues in terms of, the issue of multiple taxations. Most people, find it utterly inconvenient for them and unfair to be paying tax more than once or twice on the same, business or line item. So this issue, is something that people need to be aware of, that there is an avenue, there's a mechanism that they can go through to address some of these complaints. And the tax collectors are humans. There are issues that arises not only as it relates to multiple taxation, but also arbitrary assessment. Sometimes you will be assessed that you are meant to pay, unrealistic, figures. It can emanate out of human error or any other reason. So if you're not aware of your fundamental rights, how would you be able to address that? And this office is created, to mediate between taxpayers and the citizens. Should, in case you feel that you are treated unfairly or unjustly, you have a first point of contact. They will be able to channel your complaint, and
instead of going to court.
Instead of going to court, so the mediation will be there, and the ombudsman is charged with the responsibility of proffering or mediating or recommending, the solution, to the dispute or issues. And Nigerians, a lot of Nigerians don't know that, having access to such services is free of charge. If you're going to court, you need to, cough out some money, get a lawyer, and it comes with fees. But with the creation of this office, you're going to have access to these services free of charge. In case of harassment, some people, you can look at the small and scale medium enterprises. You can look at, these basic hawkers and whatnot. They make their own sales in tokens. But you see a lot of, tax agents, or tax collectors coming to harass them, collect multiple tax and all of these things. So they have a fundamental right too, which they need to be aware of. They are not expected to be harassed or coerced to pay tax. It is their fundamental right, to have access to information, to know the type of taxes, that is applicable to pay and at what rates, and also the time due for the payment of such taxes. So all of these things, if taxpayers are aware, and they know that they have their own point of contact or complaint, I think it will instill not only confidence by the citizens, but also the revenue generation would also be up, because you won't be coerced. It's something that, you feel protected, and if you are able to oblige by that, you won't have any reservation on that.
Yeah, indeed. I'm glad that you laid the foundations, and in Nigeria, taxpayer protection has become very, very important. Like what you outlined, small business is being taxed, multiple tax, and then the complaints with little money, and then it's taken away in tax. Now let's bring in Kaka Chris into this conversation now. Can you break it down for us? The key areas of taxpayer protection here in Nigeria. Break it down for us so that we understand it step by step.
Okay, thank you very much again for having me in your studio. Well, in terms of protections, first let me say that the Office of the Ombuds is something quite new to us in our tax system.
Yeah, and why do we need it now?
Okay, Well, like you said, you perhaps needed to actually protect citizens because obviously there are so many sections. If you read the Act, even though it's a balanced document, there are obligations of citizens, there are also responsibilities to them, and it more looks, they tell you what you have to do, and if you don't do it, these are the sanctions to you. For instance, if you don't register for TIN now, I mean, for the first month, starting from when this Act took effect, you are liable to pay 50,000 naira. That's what it is. And for every other month you fail to also get a TIN, 25,000 naira. So if from January to now you don't have a TIN, you can just imagine it. And for a company, nobody's allowed to give you any contract. If they do, they have to pay a fine of 5 million naira. These are some of the sanctions that are also contained. If you do not file the necessary returns, you're also likely. I think it's important to say before I answer your question that registering for tax does not mean you have to pay tax. Even if you don't make income, you are just required to file and say, "This, I never made any money this year," or "This is what I made is actually not within the tax. I am not liable to pay any tax," but you are required to actually file for tax return. The Office of the Ombudsman, for me personally, I have it as mixed feelings, as it were. It provides, basically for me, there are three areas it wants to actually begin to address issues. Issues relating to administrative handling of tax issues, issues relating to unreasonable delays, issues relating to tax service failure from the Nigerian Revenue Service. If you look at those three items, you're beginning to wonder what service would they render to me. I'm the one actually to pay my tax in the first instance. The ask is to give me my tax line certificates and all the rest of it. So the ball starts with me. If I do not comply, I'm in problem. Now, issues relating to tax liability. If a tax office, if a relevant tax authority, maybe at the state level or the federal level, tax me as an individual. Let's assume I file my tax return today and I file a certain amount of money. The tax authority, according to Section 10 of the RTA, said, look, they can accept, they can reject, they can accept, and also make additional assessment of what you have. So if I say my tax liability is 500,000 naira for a year, they could tell me, no, based on your various income that we have seen, you are perhaps due to pay almost about 1.2 million naira. That becomes an issue. Now, the Ombuds Office might provide a recommendation after mediating. They do it within 30 days. That's as fast track anybody could ever do. But then the decision they reach is only recommendation, and the tax authority is not supposed to, it's not held to it. Yes, so it's not justiciable anyway. And the utilitarian value of it is almost next to nothing. So you begin to wonder, it's almost like a toothless bulldog as it is. You make a recommendation and say, look, this person should be fairly treated. This is what we found that should be. The tax authority, the relevant tax authority, is at the state level, at the federal level, is not duty bound to honor it. So if there is an ongoing case between you and the tax authority, that issue will continue to linger if they are doing an additional assessment on you, even while they are trying to do within 30 days a mediation in it. So it's, the powers of it is neither here nor there, and it's important they actually look
How much of a lacuna do you think this is?
Okay, so I've told you what the services they actually provide for you, and outside that particular space, in fact, your case, yes, it saves you the trouble of unnecessarily trying to go through the legal process of taking the Nigerian Revenue Service to court. You may never win a case against it. Even if you take it to a state, maybe say you go to the Inland Revenue Service, your personal income tax has not been paid, or what you filed is not actually adequate. You wouldn't be able to have any case against them. So for me, you need to actually give it a bite. And it doesn't have that bite. The decision you make doesn't have that bite for it to actually make any meaning to anybody. So yes, you save me the money of actually going to court. You save me the money of going through a series of litigations or being turned around by the tax authorities here and there, because they will find a way of actually turning you around just to ensure they get away with what they want to bill you with. But that particular decision they make for you, it's not binding anywhere. And that becomes worrisome for most of us. So
is there an obligation for the NR
itself? I mean, the State Inland Revenue Service, we have the yes, if you make one that is actually aligning with what they actually have on ground, why would they not accept it? They will actually accept it because you've also helped in actually dealing with issues of grey area. But I think more importantly, the office of the Ombudsman, as much as we think it's come to play a particular role, my personal opinion though, it does not take away, it is not having the kind of power the TAT has, the Tax Appeal Tribunal. Whatever decision that Tax Appeal Tribunal reach, no tax authority, no relevant tax authority is not allowed to bind, it's not binding to it. You are actually expected to actually comply with it. So for me, personal opinion, it is not the relevant tax authority, either at the state or at the national level, it's not really much obligated to hold on to whatever recommendations, because whatever they're finding is just been the recommendations. It does not have any bite anywhere. It does not.
That means it cannot back and bite.
Exactly, that's what it is.
Cannot back. Okay, Farouk, that's his opinion. Actually, he said, and I would like your own opinion on it. And you know, experts like yourself have said that Nigerians need more tax education. Like a woman that is selling akara by the roadside, beans and rice by the roadside, or doesn't even understand what this means. So, you know, the tax reform has brought in so many things on the table. It's, you know, it's a mixed potpourri of so many things that it's, for somebody who is even educated, it's confusing. So does the tax office need to educate people more on that? Yes, we're doing it right now, but do we need more out there?
Well, absolutely, yes. But related to your first question, in light of his own opinion, I have, somehow a divergent view on what he said.
That's it.
Because this office, the Ombuds office, is an additional layer, to offers taxpayers protection. I told you initially that any taxpayer that feels, challenged or treated unfair can approach the tax ombuds office to register his complaint. And the whole idea of the office is to mediate and provide solution. And that is why, if you look at the whole idea of mediation, the result is always a win-win. If you look at dispute resolutions in court, it is a win-lose, outcome. So definitely, if you look at small and medium enterprises, like someone selling akara on the street who can't afford a lawyer, can easily approach this office, register a complaint, and this office is an independent, mediator that calls on the tax authorities, understands the complaint and provides solution. And in case of even businesses, individuals and companies that, are not satisfied with the outcome of the mediation, that is why there's another additional layer, which is a tax appeal tribunal, where that tribunal is dedicated to preside on disputes related to tax matters, tax administrations, and whatnot. If that also didn't suffice, there's also another additional layer, which is the Federal High Court. The taxpayers that felt that they are unfairly treated can approach the High Court if the Tax Appeal Tribunal didn't work. And there are other layers, to dispute resolutions through court processes, even up to the Supreme Court, So it is just an additional layer that I feel any modern economy requires, because it instills confidence on taxpayers that, look, I have a listening ear that I can register my complaint, and without getting to pay a dime, within a spate of 1 month, I must see result. Issues of harassment, issues of arbitrary assessment, issues of multiple taxations, issues, around confidentiality, because the tax authorities have access, to sensitive information of taxpayers, their bank accounts, their transactions and everything, so their national identification numbers and all of those informations, which, if exposed, can register serious vulnerability onto the taxpayers. So if at all any issue arises, this office is created to resolve such issues. And if you look at modern economies, they also have similar, offices where they can register their complaints.
And they have a system that works.
And they have a system that works, yes, actually. And these reforms that gave birth to the creation of these offices, this office, the Tax Ombuds Office, is meant to make the system works. You understand? As I told you, it is seamless. It is nearly instantaneous.
I like the fact that you mentioned other clients, developed countries.
Absolutely.
How accessible is that office? How accessible will it be to the informal sector where we know small businesses exist?
So this is related to the second.
The bottlenecks.
This is related to the second option, second question that you asked me about sensitization. Information, creating awareness. It is very critical. No matter how, they say information is power. It is actually power. Even taxpayers, without being informed, they don't even know their right. They don't know their obligation. They don't even know how to stand and fend for themselves. You understand? So, as part of the mandate of the Tax Ombuds Office is also to sensitize people on their rights, taxpayers on their rights. The Tax Ombuds Office has that mandate to give Nigerians the necessary. How many Nigerians today are aware of the Tax Ombuds Office? So this goes to tell you the level at which people are misinformed, people are disinformed on things that matters. So if Nigerians are aware of this office, how to file complaints, how instantaneous they are expected to get outcomes and results. Do you think anybody will just sit back and be harassed? Someone selling akara on the street, one person would come in wearing a white face, the other person a red face, the next person a black face, all requesting for tax. Someone that is generating peanuts. Look at all of those, transporters moving from road to road. You go to every checkpoint, you have to pay tax A, B, C, and D. So it is unfair to tax businesses on a particular line item, multiple taxes at a time.
You talked about confidence, and that's prompted me to ask, how important is the taxpayers' confidence for the health of the economy?
It is at the heart of it. For tax or for revenue generation sustainability to happen, there must be confidence in the system before that could happen. If today we are generating a large amount of money as revenue because of a new system that comes in, for that to get sustained, citizens must have confidence in the system. And how can the citizens have confidence in the system? It's only when they feel that their rights are being protected. And how can they feel that their rights are being protected? Is if they are being sensitized and being aware of what their rights are. How many people today know that they are not meant to pay multiple taxes? How many people today are aware that they can even claim refunds if they make excess payments of taxes? How many people are aware of that? There's a specific unit within the revenue service, Nigerian Revenue Service, that are in charge of refunding businesses and companies in areas where they are taxed either wrongly or they are overtaxed or excessively. But how many Nigerians are aware? Both the big companies, the small businesses, and individuals. So this goes to tell you that a lot of work needs to be done in the area of sensitization. And media houses like this are doing wonderfully well in coming up with this kind of critical issues so that Nigerians can get aware. We have other bodies like the National Orientation Agency. They need to step up and speed up, in making people more aware of, the changes, the reforms that are taking place. If we want this reform to be effective, at the heart of it is creating awareness. Tax literacy, is the fundamental right of every Nigerian, because we are all bound to pay tax. So it is our right to be informed. It is our right to have information at our disposals. And also as citizens, we are also obligated, to know what our right is in terms of taxation, because we all must pay tax. And on the government side, and anyways, for both the government and the citizens, as I earlier described, both are stakeholders to national development. This taxation is meant to address critical national issues in terms of healthcare, infrastructure, security, education, and also social programs. So if Nigerians feels that, look, we are paying taxes and the impact is there, so that confidence that you mentioned will be instilled. It will be there.
It will be there. It will be imbibed in
Absolutely.
in our system.
And willingly we'll pay our taxes.
Yes, indeed. Current conversations, around taxpayer protection are tied to sort of broader fiscal reforms, tax administration, modernization, digital tax systems, and all that. But there's also a growing debate, about balancing itself between government revenue generation with the economic hardship and citizens' rights. Citizens demand for better health, better roads, better housing, better all the time. And but I would also like you to speak to us about the education itself. You demand, how much are you giving? And when you give, what do you get? And who do you hold accountable for it?
Okay, thank you very much. I'm excited my colleague did not, he also said that the Ombudsman office is also advisory. I thought he was also going to be contradictory to it. In any case, let me address a couple of issues he has also raised, just to buttress what he has also mentioned. Is the fact that people in the informal sector, the new tax regime we have, has been very, very fair to them. If you're in the informal sector, where like the Akara woman, you've been citing the illustrations, you must understand there are levels where they are actually taxed. The tax reform, the federal government has got tax responsibility, states has also got, local government have also got it. The reforms has not taken away these 3 tiers of government taxing you. The presumptive tenement rate, for instance, is not collected at the federal level, it's collected at the local government level. So FCT where you're living now could come knock at your door and tell you got to pay tenement rate as a tenant living in a particular house. It is not the NRS that actually collects, neither is the state collecting it. And so there's a movement here to actually converge everything, where one body, a state inland revenue service, which is just an administrative body for the collection of personal income tax and other taxes, because the law is actually made at the federal level, is that, look, can we collect these taxes for you? I use a FCT, for instance, now. Can I take the A6 area council, rather than each area council collecting the taxes, can the FCT IRS collect for you, just being one collection spot, then remit to every other, each one of the local government what we have collected, rather than you going to this person, they come and collect income tax for you, this other local government is coming to collect, you move to another local government collecting. This taxes you see on the road, the moment he leaves within a particular area council and moves into another one, he's bound to meet a guy on the road asking for another 200 naira, because he has left within his area of jurisdiction. And that's the way it goes for them. For him, that looks like a multiple tax, but in reality, it's exactly not what it is. It is that every area council has got what they collect, the federal has got what they collect, the state has got what they collect. And the current tax reform has not taken away that particular right of any one of them. Now, to address the issue, tax compliance is a very important thing. I agree with you. I agree with him that, look, the whole idea of about taxation is not much of about collecting money from citizens. In fact, one critical service it provides is that it helps to balance the inequality in society. So you're taking from the very rich and trying to take money from the very rich to actually provide services to the very poor people. But then the question always remains is, are they really providing the service? My opinion when I present paper is, if you collect a particular tax from us, can you tie to a particular project? Today now, gambling is actually being taxed. That's a percentage they actually take on it. If you take a particular tax from me, can you tie to a specific project I want to see? This thing we call sin tax, like excise levy, government puts it on an item to discourage you from consuming it. That's why we call it sin tax. It's not going to stop you from consuming it, but it's going to put a heavy tax on it. Alcohol, for instance, tobacco, for instance. If you have to
do it, you pay extra.
For it. So if it's a big habit for you, you continue. Same thing with gambling.
Discouraging it.
Because, I mean, the trade rule does not permit you to stop people who are importing such things. They might give you retaliatory trade actions, but the government would discourage you from actually consuming it by putting a heavy tax burden on it. If you do that, can we mobilize that resources and tie it to a specific project you want to do? What happens in our clan here is government mobilizes all tax revenue and say this is what we it just ends up in the rubbles of other kind of resources, and you can't specifically tie it to a particular thing and say this is what government has done with my tax revenue.
In the case of tobacco, for instance, is it not tied to health?
No, of course. But then can you draw the nexus between the revenue generated from tobacco smoking, from tobacco, which is huge amount of money, and generate a specific particular project for me? You can't, as it were. And so what we're saying is, if you take a particular tax item, can you tie it to a particular specific project that the civil society can go and verify? This is the money you generated. This is what is done with it. To mobilize resources, oil revenue, tax revenue, and everything together, and say you are promoting development, it's not really going to work. That's why you see that Nigerian government continues to borrow money every time. We have a fiscal deficit that even our unborn children is actually going to be confronted with. We have compromised the capacity of our future generation to actually independently stand on their own and be able to solve the problem of this country because government continues to borrow. We have said this particular system will generate the money. Let me address another issue. People in the informal sector have got what we call presumptive tax. I mean, a lot of them, the challenge they have is that they don't have a record of accounts. All that money comes in, money goes out. Some of them don't even have at all in the first instance. I mean, beyond the woman who sells on the street, there are artisans who have shops, but their record of accounting is not good enough that when the tax authority ever comes to you, or if he has to file, by the way, the law permits us to do self-assessment. The tax authority does not have to come to you for you to do a self-assessment. Section 4, Section 5 of the Tax Act actually says that. I am expected to do a self-assessment whether I am liable to pay tax or not. As a taxable person, I am supposed to do it. And it's not only an individual or company. In fact, ministry, department, and agency of government at the national, sub-national level are expected to also do the same thing. Because I work for you, you collect my taxes, you deduct, you have to remit to the, you must file tax return. And if you don't, government will fine you for it. So the presumptive tax help people who are in the informal sector. And the rule says if you earn less than 12 million naira per annum, you are not supposed to pay anything, but you are expected to actually file your tax return. If I earn more than 12 million naira within that particular informal sector, I only pay 1% of my revenue generated for a particular year as tax return. For those of us, those in the formal sector, your first 800,000, there is always a misgiving that if you earn less, 800,000 means if I aggregate all your income you make from your side hustle, your regular income, I add it up together, the first 800 is taxed at 0%. Subsequent one goes with 15, 18, 21, 23, up to 25, thereabout. You will see that there are provisions within the tax system that allows people not to. So I may perhaps be within the tax net, but I do not pay tax at the end. All my obligation is I must file, do self-assessment once a year, and I file it. If I fail to, I'm going to pay a fine. According to Section 101, I'm going to pay a fine of 100,000 naira for that particular month, which I actually violated it. And good enough, it ended in April just here. Ordinarily, it's supposed to be January 4. So it's important that people in the informal sector who are always suffering the whole idea of multiple taxation is that the system has come to provide a solution to you. But then at the subnational level, it is important that you harmonize what they are doing there with what is obtainable at the federal level. That way, State will not tax you, federal tax you, local government will still tax you. As we speak today, they are still taxing everybody as it is.
They are still taxing everybody. I like the fact that you raised some of these pertinent issues, and it all boils down to trust itself.
Yeah, that's it.
Trusting in the government and what the government can do for you. When you're taxed, you need to see where your money is going to. So, Farouk, how does weak trust in government sort of affect tax compliance in Nigeria, based on that?
Well, I think it's a direct no, it's a direct question you're asking. The answer is very glaring. Nobody complies to or succumb to participating, in things that he doesn't trust, that they don't trust. Nobody does that. So trust is very vital, is very key. So people easily trust what they visibly see. For instance, if we are seeing roads, hospitals, infrastructure, and whatnot, we will trust the government and will be more than willing to pay tax to see more of it. Secondly, everything revolves around protecting taxpayers. If taxpayers are not protected, how can they trust the system? How can they have confidence in the system? There's no way. They have to feel protected. And there are several rights that the taxpayer has. Right to information, for instance. Right to not pay multiple taxes. That's right to non-multiple taxation. The taxpayer also have right to fair treatment. And a whole lot of, other rights that are associated to the taxpayer. So if the taxpayer feels infringed in any of these rights, tell me how can he trust the system? And that is why this reform, comes with this optimization in terms of protection of, the rights of taxpayers. But what is critical is awareness. That is where the major bulk of work is required. Sensitization, creating awareness. The Nigerian Revenue Service is doing that, but they have to do more of it. Engage consultants, engage the media houses and any other tax stakeholder in trying to achieve such, objective. It's very critical and it's very fundamental. So that is why, for instance, I give you an example, my own personal experience. When this new reform came in, and I tried to look at some of the fundamental rights of taxpayers, and I was able to pick interest in one of it, and I tried to pursue it to the logical end, which is claiming refunds in instances where I felt I have paid more than what is required. Then I took the bold step. I think I researched online. I was able to get, information on the process and the procedures of applying for such refunds. And I did that. I applied for refund. Okay. And the process was seamless with just a simple letter.
And you were refunded?
I'm about to be refunded. Let me put it that way.
No, you have not been refunded, yeah.
But I was...
I sound confident.
Yes, I'm confident I'll be refunded because the process was seamless. I thought it's something that if I submit a letter, that's the end of it. Nobody will even dare contact me. But I told myself, let me put it to test. Let me hypothesize on it. I submitted the letter. Within a very short space of time, I was contacted, that I should come for interview. They requested some documents. I sat with, their staff, I presented my document. They interviewed me. I responded. And it was all seamless. And they said they will get back to me.
That is you introduced yourself. So can you imagine a scenario where maybe a vulcanizer or somebody that, sells, like we say, sells like around the road or has a saloon and is not well educated in that area? How do you go about
that? Is why I said sensitization, creation of awareness is very critical.
Whose role is this?
I don't know anybody. Is a collective responsibility within the government stakeholders, NRS. I made mention of National Orientation Agency.
Yeah.
It's also your responsibility as a media house.
That is what we are doing.
Absolutely. So more of this needs to. There has to be a dedicated program for that. You understand? Everybody pays task. Engage as much as possible consultants. I'm glad the Chartered Institute of Taxation is here. They also have that shared responsibility of creating awareness within the public. And I think it should be part of their core mandate too.
Okay, let's introduce him now. Let's pause here and introduce him. Our other guest is here, seated here in the studio, Benjamin Namadu, Chairman, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, Abuja District Society. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
I believe you've been listening to this conversation. Let's have your opinion on the new Ombuds Office and how it will impact the tax office and also Nigerians who pay tax.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning once again. I was following up on his conversation about the need for taxpayers to be aware of their rights. I think it's part of the core mandate of this issue of rights of taxpayers that we are conversing about this morning. The Office of the Tax Ombuds is a new innovation in our tax ecosystem. It hasn't been there before. The new tax law, I think section part 6 of the Joint Revenue Board Establishment Act brought it to the fore. And then what is it meant to achieve? The idea behind it is that we have layers of taxpayers' appeal and objection when you are not satisfied with the tax system before now, majorly starting at the Tax Appeal Tribunal. But the challenge therein is that the processes of approaching the appeal tribunal is quite complicated for an ordinary taxpayer. So it then became imperative that we have another system that could accommodate everybody within this tax space. That's why the Office of the Tax Ombuds was introduced. If you check, part of their mandate is that they are not expected to charge any fee for the service they render for taxpayers. That means every taxpayer who feels that their rights under our tax laws have been violated can approach this body, lay their complaints, and they come in as an arbiter, and then they settle this matter without going to the courts or the tribunals. So it's a very wonderful innovation. We see it as something that is going to eventually help our tax system to become more robust and more efficient in the long run.
But before you came in, Mr. Namudu, I mean, when Chris Kaka was speaking, he says basically that the Office of the Tax Ombud can back but cannot bite. Not his words, but this is what he implied. So how effective can the office be in this circumstance?
Well, that backing is a lot. It's all the time you have to back before things are done, and bite rather. So the backing is that within the system, somebody is already taking up that responsibility on behalf of the taxpayer. And I can tell you for free, the structure of our tax system that we operate today, most tax administrators don't want matters to be escalated beyond certain levels. So if it is something that can be handled at the level of the tax ombuds, they quickly step in and attend to it. Like my co-panelist was mentioning earlier, when you have issue and you present it to the tax authority, the structure within, I can speak freely for the NRS, the structure they have have there is such that the way they manage crisis, they tend to attend to it before it escalates even further. So what the tax ombuds is going to do is be a first layer of appeal for taxpayer. So that backing is a lot. It's telling the tax authority, look, somebody is complaining, you are not getting something right. Please listen to him. Attend to the person. So at some point, when there are disagreements, they can even step in and help mediate between the tax authority and the taxpayer, and then both parties are able to come to an agreeable conclusion, and then there is no need to approach courts and escalate.
So what's your take on multiple taxation that most Nigerians are afraid of? And you talked about you can just walk into the office and complain. We're in a digital world. Most Nigerians say, I don't have money to go to the office, I will not go. Why don't we have a digital platform where complaints can be laid?
Okay.
Don't you think that will work?
It makes a lot of sense. So the tax ombuds office, we are expecting them to come out with their operational modalities. We don't have all those here. Like I said, it's a new office. They are just setting up the structures. I want to believe this is one of the things that they will definitely have to take up so that Nigerians can complete without going to the office.
That will actually happen today, because I'm aware they are launching the website and other complaint channels and all of that, so that
fantastic. Do the digital. So it's definitely going to be there. And then the Nigerian Revenue Service System already have their the lines you can call, the emails, and then they have even done something even better. The new Ref 360 platform they have introduced has a complete console on the website where if you have issues, right there where you are logging in, you can send your complaint and they are receiving it immediately, and then they are attending to it. Get response.
Okay, let's bring Mr. Chris into this conversation, back into this conversation now. We cannot rule out the big elephant in the room, which is corruption, which affects the tax system in Nigeria, we all know, because it's a chain. And when this chain is broken through corruption, what happens to the money that is being collected? Because a lot of people say, even if I pay tax, even if they collect the 200, 300, do they even take it to the tax office? And there are some people who are not even part of the tax system. They are just corrupt Nigerians who just go with ID card that is fake and keep collecting money from people. So let's talk about this thing, corruption, which affects our collection of tax in this country.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't really know where to pick it, but I think it's something all Nigerians. It's a systemic one. It's not something that is episodic. So everybody knows there's a corruption in the system, and the tax system is not immune to it. In my office, for instance, we're doing a project in Yola one time. It was Norwegian Refugee Commission that provided the funding, and the system we work is I double check. Everybody will give any service to, maybe you're bidding pit latrines for somewhere in Adamawa. We're taking your withholding tax almost immediately. And at the end of the month, we take everybody's aggregated, we put a schedule to it, write the checks, submit it to the relevant tax authority. If it's a corporate tax, obviously it goes to the Nigerian Revenue Service. If it's an income tax, personal income tax, we just send it to the relevant tax authority at the state level where the project officer is actually residing. So they walked into my office one day, and he came with this very long. I remember it was almost about 12-point-something million. I said that you have not actually paid the appropriate tax for the preceding year. And be honest with you, when I picked up the phone and called the contact we have at the NRS, because your tax office must be one within the area of your office. There are so many Nigerian Revenue Services office, but the one that is related to your area of that's where your tax place should actually be. And we made a call and said, so officers of yours showed up in our offices, and they said they dropped a letter, actually stamped the office. I mean, you look at the paper, it looks so genuine. And he said, just ignore those guys, they don't know what. He didn't want to give the details, but then the way he said ignore them, with a wave of hand on the phone, was just showing that these guys were actually going around trying to see who is going to fall prey for what they do. So I drew that illustration to also buttress what you said, that there's corruption in the system itself. At the federal level, and that's why I said, look, when you collect a lot of taxes and everything get mixed up somewhere, like my colleague said earlier, if you show me what you do with my tax revenue, I am more willing to want to. Tax compliance is a very easy thing. I'll do self-assessment of myself. If I am defaulting in certain area, I'll do it. But like he said, there are areas of the tax, for instance, like the allowances you're supposed to be given. I'm supposed to remove from it every year my rent allowance from it. My rent allowance is not supposed to be taxed to a maximum of 500,000. I mean, if you break that down, if you divide 500,000 naira by 12, you can't do any less than 40,000 naira a month thereabout. If you take that and add it back to my salary, it's something every month. Again, the life assurance policy, if I take up one for myself or my spouse, it's not supposed to be taxed as well. So if my total revenue is this, I'm supposed to remove that, remove my rent, remove this one before I'm taxed. Again, if I borrowed money from a financial institution to actually embark on a self-owned house, I am not supposed to be taxed for that particular money I'm actually using. That's why people prefer to borrow money.
You're paying interest.
Yes. People prefer to borrow money to build a house than using their own savings to build a house, because as you use the one you have, it's already taxed. There are other allowances I'm supposed not to pay. Okay, for instance, my pension, 8%, I'm supposed to be deducting it from it. People in the private sector don't really do that. My national housing funds, about 2.5% of my basic salary. These are things that they are supposed to deduct from it. Even people who work in the formal sector, if you don't provide the evidence to some of these things, like my housing, they wouldn't take it into consideration, because the evidence must be there before they provide those allowances. I'm sure that's what my colleagues may have referred to in certain instances, if it's a personal one, or maybe for corporate organization where you've actually been overtaxed. So the idea is, government is expected, as it were, to be able to let us have a nexus between each type of tax you collect, like that tobacco tax you were actually mentioning. Can we tie it to a particular things? I've told you today that people who get involved in gambling are now being taxed 5%. The lottos, the rest. I said one day, they were laughing in your studio when I mentioned Babaji, but every gamble you play right now, there is an element of it. Do you know that most of the social vices that the youths are actually involved is actually being aided by this? You see them sit down, some are very good at actually doing this permutation. In any case, they're all related to football. And some who can predict football very well make a lot of money. He makes a lot of money, he goes and squanders and commits some crime elsewhere. So can we collect that particular money? Don't mix it up with other revenue. Can you create something that, it's actually meant to take youths away from these particular issues and vices? That way, when he's paying, this is what my money is being done with. You collect tax revenue in the marketplaces. Can we see the facility you're providing in the market? You don't need to force anybody to pay, because everybody is proud to say, oh, my tax money has been used to build this bridge, and I can link it to it, even if it's a minute amount of money. Until government comes to that point where we can have a nexus between the revenue we generate and, the tax I pay and the aggregate government collects to a particular service that is related to me as well. So don't collect money from me when I'm in a particular sector and go and use it to develop another sector. It's not really going to make
Okay, Nigerians are contributing to this conversation. They have questions. Let me read the ones I have, then Victor will read before we go to the next question. So, good morning, Nigeria. Tax revenue generation is a very good and better way of generating funds for the infrastructural development of any nation in the world. However, I hope and pray the creation of the new office will make sure of processes of generating tax is monitored and make sure funds generated are not diverted to public individuals' pocket. That's from Alhaji Garko Karu site, Abuja. And Salawu Yakubu from Lagos said, my opinion on protecting taxpayers in Nigeria is that people will accept paying tax if they can see what it does. Potholes filled, schools running, PHC stocked with drugs. Right now, the big trust issue is I pay, but where does it go? Public dashboards for budget releases and project completion at state, local government level will help a lot. It's hard to justify tax protection if citizens can't hold officials accountable. And this one didn't leave a name. He said, how can citizens be protected from the informal illegal levies and taxes being collected from drivers, Okada riders, haulage vehicles, etc. that are being passed on to consumers?
All right, perhaps Farouk will want to respond before we take I have a couple here.
Okay, to start with the last question, I think digitization of tax administration is at the heart of resolving most of these issues. If filing is made online, assessment, we have e-filing, e-assessment, you know, and we have online complaint mechanisms, you know, so a lot of issues will be resolved in terms of corruption, in terms of double taxation, in terms of even harassment, you know, of taxpayers. This will go a long way in mitigating most of these issues. And the other question that goes to asking how also taxpayer money can be tracked and in case of diverting public funds and whatnot. You see, there are agencies. The Tax Ombuds Office has its own mandate, and it is not within the mandate of the Ombuds Office to address issues of corruption or, you know, financial malpractices. That is why we have ICPC, we have the EFCC, and we even have the NFIU, we have the police. These are government institutions that are saddled with the responsibility of ensuring that this kind of issues are being handled, you know, accordingly and appropriately.
All right, thank you for. Let me take the couple of messages that I have here. From Ahmed Babadikwa in Maiduguri. Protecting taxpayers means building trust, he writes. Too many Nigerians pay taxes, but see poor roads and broken hospitals in return. The government must guarantee three things: transparency in spending, visible public services for every tax paid, and an end to harassment by aggressive consultants and illegal levies. When taxpayers are protected, they pay willingly, turning forced compliance into true patriotism. All right, thank you. This other one is without a name. Good morning, NTA. The tax laws are too academic. Beautiful principles, nice policies, but there's one fundamental obstacle: corruption. What are the mechanisms for punitive measures for those who embezzle? Of course, it's responded it's not within their mandate. But finally, from here, Nana from Port Harcourt. Why is it that tax officials always visit taxpayers with the mindset of crucifying them? Can tax officials be properly educated to curb some of these anomalies? And finally, Stephen Adewale from Ikorodu, Lagos. Good morning. Please, where do I go to lodge a complaint on tax issues? I paid a tax from June 2016 to January 2020, but the company did not issue me tax certificate, even up till now. Let's begin with Benjamin and Amudu. You have response for?
Yeah, yes, a couple of them. I think most of the conversation circle around issue of taxpayers' rights and then access to the right information. Like I mentioned earlier, taxpayers have right to correct information. And it's good we are doing what we are doing now, still helping the tax space for people to know what their rights and obligations are. So Ahmed from Maiduguri did mention issues around harassment from tax officials, and then Nana talked about tax authorities going with a mindset. So
being educated themselves.
Exactly. So the issue still borders around having the right information. So one of the things that was brought into this new Tax Reform Act is that, one, for instance, just two instances I will give. You are not allowed to pay taxes in cash anymore, right? Two, you cannot put roadblocks anywhere in Nigeria in the name that you want to collect tax. So if any tax person approaches you and you pay him cash, just know that from that singular transaction, that money is already missing somewhere
along the way.
Along the way. So you are not expected to pay cash. But we could have instances where some of the subnationals would probably say they don't have the infrastructure and the system for now to do the cashless tax environment. But what we expect is that as we transition into the full implementation of the new tax laws, everything around cash will be eliminated. And what that does is that it tacitly eliminates corruption from the system. So when we say we want to address issues of corruption in the system, you need what we call checks in the layers of the whole system that addresses issues around corruption. Then, issues of roadblocks, that is pure harassment. Our tax law has now made it a crime for you to mount roadblock in the name that you want to collect tax. So, but taxpayers need to have this information. So if the tax authority, like Mr. Chuka mentioned, comes to him and start negotiating, and it involves paying cash to them, then something is wrong somewhere. It's an extortion.
Missing in transition.
It's missing in transit. So what you would do as a taxpayer is that any obligation on you to pay tax, insist that they should give you an account of the tax authority where you pay your money to, and then they issue you evidence of payment. With that, we are able to address quite a large chunk of the corruption that happens within that system. So putting this out for taxpayers to know that this harassment they are facing, one, it could be because they want to get something out of that arrangement. Also, it could also be that that tax officer is not properly trained. You know, at the federal level, the NRS put premium in training and retraining of their personnel so that they are able to attend to taxpayers courteously. But we cannot say that for all the subnationals. So maybe as we evolve, the tax officers and the tax authority begin to learn some of these things afresh, they will be seeing the taxpayer as the king. Because it is the taxes they are paying that they are paying you your salaries from. So it behoves on you to treat them with courtesy and with respect.
Okay, Mr. Chris, quickly, in just 30 seconds, implementation is key, and that is one problem we've always had. So how do we go about it?
Well, I think it's actually made input into a lot of them, how we actually begin to implement these things. The point has been made that, look, information is actually key. We all need to be abreast. And I think the NRS is also doing, I know they have some programs on some of radio stations and TV stations where on a regular basis they sensitize Nigerians. How well Nigerians are listening to it, it's another ballgame. I think the tax authority needs, the ombudsman, which is also part of their responsibility, like he pointed out, it's also important for them to continue to sensitize Nigerians. I think the media is doing a lot in that direction, but I think much more needs to be done, particularly with people in the informal sector, and particularly with authorities at the subnational level. That's where a lot of harassments and multiple taxation really begins to happen. They actually need to actually be addressed. I mean, you know, giving some proper training to see how these things can actually go on seamlessly, so that Nigerians can really do self-assessment and compliance, as it were.
All right, I guess that would be a fine place to leave this conversation. It's something that we'll have to discuss over and over as the Office of the Tax Ombud begins its work and Nigerians get more familiar with it. So let me thank Chris Kaka, who is an economist, National Coordinator, Trade Network Initiative, and Policy Analyst. We appreciate your time and your thoughts. Let me also thank Farouk Abdullahi, who is Chairman, Ultimate Spectrum, and the financial analyst. Thank you very much, as always, for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. It's always my pleasure.
And the last but not the least, Benjamin Namudu, who is the Chairman, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria in Abuja, and District Society. We appreciate your coming. We appreciate your thoughts. We appreciate, the points that you made on the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, that does it for this conversation. Our next is on the 50th anniversary of Ratau. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us until after this break.